I think it's been quite an interesting year overall. I mean, we've had some decent developments. We've had Pandora's IPO. We've had, finally, BlackBerry have come into the music space. We've got, of course, Spotify launching in the US and you're getting a decent number of subscribers under the belt. And then, of course, everybody's holding their breath this week to see what Facebook's going to do. So I hope, and I'll be interested in hearing your views on this, I hope that if Facebook do something smart, what they'll be able to do is join the dots of a lot of these different services and essentially drag some of these slightly outdated services into the social age.
You would know how that's going to happen better than me. The way that I look at it is that Facebook's a wonderful addition to the way that people communicate, and it provides people with a great feeling of influence than they've had before. And you see that all over the world, not just in music. You see it in the Arab Spring. You see that Facebook, Twitter, and these social services have a role. The thing that I wonder, though, is how deep it gets for music. The way that it works is if you have 100 friends, your influence on your 100th friend is a lot less than your influence on your first 10 friends. So the question really is how does Facebook's aggregation and how does the Facebook audience really have an effect on music? How is it going to improve music consumption? And so the first thing that Facebook's done, which I think is an enormous positive, is created a kind of equity coming into the market.
I think one of the things which Facebook will do is turn Facebook into a digital music dashboard. Because what they need to do is lock people in for when the Facebook killer finally comes along. They need to give people more reasons not to switch from Facebook. It's your jumping off point to the internet, to the bits of the internet you know. Google's your jumping off point to the bits of the internet you don't know. Facebook's your jumping off point to the places and the people you know. In that context, then a music service being part of this sort of content dashboard of Facebook, that would sound like a really valuable place for Boinc to be. So are you there? Do you plan to be there?
Well, I think that this dashboard idea is kind of interesting, but it also shows just how marginal most of these music services are. I see music as this entire ecosystem in itself. I see music as this incredibly rich resource. I see that a Pandora kind of an experience is just part of an experience that any music service should provide. What we're trying to do is put an API around music, right, and say to people, okay, here's music, now what do you want to do with it, right? How do you want to experience it? And we're going to suggest some ways that kids should and could work, but I'm guessing that over time they're going to tell us a lot more about how they want to consume music than we know.
I think the idea of subsidising music or getting a telco or a device manufacturer to subsidise music, I think is crucial. It's something I've been talking about for a lot of years. I think it's the third way of digital music. At the high end, you've got the aficionados, the 5%. In the emerged markets, potentially 0.5% across the globe. At the bottom end, you've got the free market, the YouTubes, Spotifys, all those mass market people who've fallen out of the habit of paying for music or never learnt it. But of course, that doesn't pay the bills for the record labels. So you've got in the middle, I think, this subsidised way where the only way to fight free is with free itself. And if free doesn't pay, you've got to at least make things feel like they're free. So how important is that to the success of Boinc changing the way that people interact with digital music? The fact that you're making people feel that music is free, even if it's not.
I have to go back a little bit because the word subsidy isn't in my lexicon, right? I don't think it's a subsidy. It's an appreciation of the total value of music. The value of music to a telco is not just the increase in ARPU to the telco, the increase in revenue that they get from a subscriber. The value of music to a telco is that the subscriber is likely to hang around a little bit longer, enjoy the services a little bit longer, consume a bit more data than they did before, be better customers than they were before, a sufficient way of acquiring new customers. All of that has value. Our goal is to monetize that value by providing a contribution that recognizes that value to the telco. So we're not in any way asking anybody for a subsidy. We're looking at people to completely value music. And this idea of completely valuing content is probably the most important idea in the media world.
I agree with everything you're saying. And I would sort of characterize it saying there's two big learnings so far. One is one size does not fit all with digital music. The other thing, though, I think is nobody yet seems to have got a mass market value proposition fixed, apart from file sharing and YouTube. So Tell me why Boinc is going to be able to solve those problems when nobody else has.
From an economic perspective, what we're doing is we're saying that people pay too much for music who have to pay for music. So we're going to democratize music consumption. What we're going to do is by embedding these licenses in devices, we're going to reduce the cost to a point which the consumer doesn't mind paying and bring thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of new consumers into the marketplace. So it's really not much of a trick. It's pretty obvious. Bring the cost down to something that people don't notice anymore. Provide them with this API around the entirety of music. Let them behave in the way that they've wanted to behave since the birth of digital music and reap those rewards. Don't keep going after the 5% of people who've proven that they are prepared to pay for music. And by the way, this is such an exaggeration. It's 5% in the developed world. In the developing world, it's 0.5%. It's a tiny amount of people that actually pay for music. So expand that market out. So what we're doing is, and what we repeat again and again and again, is we're democratizing music consumption and the payment for music. We're saying that everybody should pay a little bit and a few people should not be forced to pay a lot.
Okay, so it's interesting you pick up on the developed world versus the emerging markets, and nobody's really paid much attention to the emerging markets. Is this something which Boinc is going to try to do in a way others haven't?
Yeah, I mean, we think the emerging markets provides the emerging opportunity. The potential for growth there is fantastic because what you're having is people being economically empowered at a much faster rate than in the West. So if you look at it right now, I can't remember the exact figures, but about 70% of global music revenues comes out of about 8 countries, right? We think that within Boinc, about 70% of revenues is going to come out of countries that currently are the 30%, So they're the people who are not paying for music.
So, I mean, these are challenging and exciting times, and you've got a heck of a challenge ahead of you. So how do you feel about it going into the next sort of 9 or 12 months?
It's insane, right? We have the opportunity to disrupt an entire industry. I'm not sure that it's ever happened before. The music industry after us will be very different than the music industry before us, and with it comes, enormous responsibility, but an incredible, feeling that you're doing something to the positive. So I wouldn't swap it for anything. Doesn't stop it being tough.